Tonight, Joe Biden declares the Quad Alliance will last way beyond November's presidential election. Hello, I'm Briana Shepherd. This is ABC News. Israel braces for further Hezbollah retaliation after killing 16 of its most senior leaders. The new No Excuses campaign to shift community attitudes on speeding. And all the build-up for the first non-Victorian AFL Grand Final since 2006. US President Joe Biden has accused China of acting aggressively in the Pacific, arguing Beijing is testing Australia and other countries in the region. The outgoing leader's comments were captured in a hot mic moment during a summit of Quad leaders, including Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in his home state in the US. North America correspondent Jade McMillan is in Claremont, Delaware.
Fresh from his visit to Joe Biden's home, Anthony Albanese was welcomed to his old high school.
It is absolutely delightful to be here amongst friends.
Joining the leaders of India and Japan for the president's final Quad meeting.
We're democracies. We're democracies who know how to get things done.
The Quad it doesn't have a long history. That means it's not defined by tradition, but it also means it's not confined by it. It means that as it develops, it can evolve.
Joe Biden elevated the grouping to the leadership level in the early days of his presidency, in what's seen as an effort to counter China's expanding influence in the Indo-Pacific region. And in an audio feed still running after the cameras left, the president's message to the Quad behind closed doors was clear.
China continues to behave aggressively, testing us all across the region. And it's true in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, South Asia, and the Taiwan Straits.
The leaders agreed to closer maritime ties, including joint Coast Guard operations that the US says will take place in the South China Sea.
The four countries will have personnel on perhaps a single vessel, improving the interoperability and the cooperation that occurs.
Joe Biden is trying to use his remaining time in office to solidify his foreign policy legacy. The president using this meeting to send a signal that he wants America's increased focus on the Indo-Pacific to outlast his administration.
Mr. President, will the Quad survive beyond the election in November?
With Japan's Prime Minister also stepping down and an Australian election approaching, there'll be at least a couple of new faces at the next Quad meeting.
Never goodbye. He's at the end of the telephone. I get me.
Another farewell in Joe Biden's long goodbye. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Claremont, Delaware.
Israel is bracing for further retaliation from Hezbollah after killing a senior militant commander in a strike in Lebanon's capital. Authorities in Beirut say the strike killed 45 people, including women and children. Tonight, Israeli forces and Hezbollah militants are exchanging intense fire along the border, with the militant group also launching a barrage of rockets deep into Israeli territory.
An 8-storey apartment block in Lebanon's capital reduced to rubble. Emergency crews and civilians sift through the remains of Israel's latest strike that left behind a scene of devastation.
People were coming home from work and some were coming to pick up their children from the nursery. It's unbelievable.
This blast killed at least 45 people, including women and children. Among those killed was senior Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Ail, who led the group's elite unit, the Radwan force.
No matter how much they strike us, we will not waver.
The strike sparked a significant Hezbollah response deep into Israeli territory. This footage showing Israel's Iron Dome missile defence system in action. With fears further retaliation could follow, the Israeli army ordered restrictions on large public gatherings across the country's north and cancelled all education activities.
Dozens of Israeli Air Force aircraft are currently striking terrorist targets and rocket launchers to remove the threat to Israeli civilians.
The conflict is not just a war of weapons, but a war of words and ideas.
We're just going to break into some news that's coming in our Al Jazeera office.
Israeli soldiers raiding Qatari broadcaster Al Jazeera's office in the West Bank with a military order to shut down the bureau for 45 days. But as Israel flexes its military might on a growing number of fronts, anger and opposition to the war back home is growing, with calls for peace and a return of hostages growing ever stronger. As the conflict continues, a grim toll on the people of Gaza. More than 41,000 dead in the Gaza Strip since October 7. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Sri Lanka is witnessing a major political upset tonight, with a leftist candidate surpassing heavyweights to become the front-runner to take the top job. The National People's Power leader is on track to become the country's next president after the first poll since Sri Lanka's worst economic collapse in history. South Asia correspondent Ellie Grounds reports from Colombo.
Armed police on the streets of Colombo. The post-poll curfew was extended as the vote count went on. Sri Lankans turned out for the poll in close to record numbers, ready to have their say. Once the curfew was lifted, people were back out on the streets, with a sense of change in the air.
He a good politician for us. He is a good leader.
This is the first time Sri Lankan people change this elite establishment, which destroy the pride and the sovereignty and the economy and the future of this country.
Left-wing leader Anuru Kumara Dissanayaka will have a huge job ahead of him. Though the queues for fuel and medicine may be gone, essentials are still unaffordable for many Sri Lankans. The price of milk powder, a staple, has nearly tripled since before the crisis. And the country is in more than $4.4 billion debt to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout, which Dissanayaka has vowed to renegotiate. Critics say he's not ready for the challenge, but his camp isn't worried.
They have voted us, so I think that people have completely disregarded that criticism.
The next likely president fought off two high-profile challenges. The incumbent Ranil Wickremesinghe, who steered Sri Lanka away from bankruptcy with the IMF deal, and opposition leader Sajit Premadasa. Another upset, the complete wipeout of the Rajapaksa family, who have dominated Sri Lankan politics for decades.
They were like kings, they were like emperors here, but people have completely deleted them.
One of the most repeated words throughout this election campaign was change. With these results, Sri Lankans have clearly shown they're fed up with the politics of the past and want to take the country in a different direction. Ellie Grounds, ABC News, Colombo.
The state government says its new road safety campaign aims to change the culture around speeding, with more than 50% of WA drivers of the view speeding is okay. The new tack follows a road safety roundtable this month, which called for more targeted and harder-hitting advertising.
Come on. Relax, man. I know this road like...
Back was broken in 3 places.
A stark warning with one simple message.
We know that the single biggest factor that's driving our state's road toll is speeding.
The adverts will run across TV, print and radio, as well as social media. A road safety advocate who was in a horrific crash which left him and 3 others with permanent disabilities is backing the initiative.
19 years old at the time of my crash, passenger in a vehicle where the driver was speeding. He was actually told to slow down by 2 people in that vehicle, and unfortunately that didn't happen, and the consequences, we hit a tree head on over 100 kilometres an hour in a 60 zone. Something has to change, especially with our young drivers.
The Road Safety Commissioner says despite roads and cars becoming safer, there remains a cultural problem.
We have 80+% of people who admit to speeding. We have 50+% of people who think that speeding's okay. And that's the change we need to make.
The next phase of the campaign will include videos produced from the Kimberley region aimed at Aboriginal people who are 3 times more likely to die in a car crash, all with the goal to prevent further tragedies.
Speeding shatters your excuses.
Kenneth Pung, ABC News.
Victorian police are preparing a brief of evidence for an Italian court after an arrest was made over the notorious Easey Street murders almost half a century ago. Authorities arrested 65-year-old Perry Carumbulis in Rome last week. The breakthrough has been decades in the making, but his extradition could still be a lengthy process.
After almost 50 years of carefully collecting evidence, another crucial piece of the puzzle was just found in Italy. 65-year-old Perry Carumbulis arrested over one of Melbourne's most notorious murders.
It's quite a spectacular breakthrough, and full marks to Victorian police for getting to it.
That breakthrough came after a request from Victoria Police to Interpol, which issued an international red notice.
The notice includes identifying information about the fugitive and details of the crime they are wanted for.
Perry Carumbulis is understood to be a former student at the Collingwood school where Susan Bartlett was a teacher. She and her housemate, Suzanne Armstrong, were brutally killed in their Easey Street home in Collingwood in January 1977. Suzanne Armstrong's 16-month-old son was left stranded in his cot for days. He grew up without his mum, but police never gave up.
Are there any scientific investigations taking place?
Oh yes, there certainly are.
In 1977, when this double murder took place, we didn't understand how impactful and useful DNA was going to be in terms of solving crime. So it's really quite remarkable that this evidence was maintained.
The 65-year-old has been on Victoria Police's radar for years, wanted but out of reach, when he moved from Melbourne to Greece, where the local statute of limitations prevented his arrest. But on Thursday, his arrival at a Rome airport flagged the Interpol red notice. To get him back, Victoria Police has 45 days to formally request extradition through the Attorney-General.
They'll then need to formally seek from the Commonwealth Government an international arrest warrant by way of an extradition request directly to Italy.
But from there, the process could take months or even years. If the extradition is approved and Carumbulis is sent back, then charged with murder, he would be tried here in Melbourne. Loved ones of Suzanne Armstrong and Susan Bartlett hope the truth will finally be revealed. Cyan Valance, ABC News, Melbourne.
Russia's military says it has shot down more than 100 Ukrainian drones fired into its airspace overnight as the conflict between the two countries rages on. One Ukrainian attack on a munitions depot caused an uncontrollable fire, sparking a massive explosion inside Russia near the city of Krasnodar. An apartment block in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, was damaged in an explosion overnight, injuring 12 civilians. Ukrainian authorities blaming a Russian bomb. The family of a New Zealand pilot held hostage in Indonesia for over 1.5 years say they're relieved and extremely grateful he's been freed. Philip Mertens was kidnapped last year from an airport in the province of Papua. He was taken by an armed rebel group looking to use him as a bargaining chip to seek independence from Indonesia. In a statement, the 38-year-old's family thanked Indonesian and New Zealand authorities for their work in getting him released. They also expressed gratitude to the rebel army for keeping Mertens safe and healthy. Health Minister Mark Butler says Australia will have millions more IV fluid bags than it needs, despite doctors still being told they need to conserve them. The Australian College of Anaesthetists says many doctors are still giving patients less IV fluid than they'd like to following recent shortages. However, the government says it has secured 22 million bags for a 6-month period, which is about 3 million more than it would typically secure over that time. Mr Butler says he's confident in Australia's supply.
We're looking at longer-term security of supply as well. For example, our major manufacturer here in Australia will be opening an additional production line in coming weeks.
About 215,000 Australians are now eligible for a free shingles vaccine. The Shingrix vaccine can already be accessed by people over 65, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people over 50, as well as high-risk immunocompromised adults. Previously, people with weakened immune systems due to an underlying health condition or as a side effect of a treatment had to pay up to $560 for the 2-dose course. But now they won't have to, with the federal government spending $57.7 million over 4 years to expand the program.
I have so many other appointments and my medications and all of these other things that I need to pay for. So spending $250 on a vaccination just wasn't feasible for me, but now I can get it without having to pay that. It's actually amazing for me.
Regional Australia is on the front line of the country's shift to renewable energy. But wind and solar farms aren't always welcomed. That's not the case in one renewable energy zone in southwest New South Wales. Locals are on board with a proposed project around the town of Hay, brokering a deal they believe can deliver long-term benefits.
On the vast Hay Plain, renewable energy is just over the horizon.
This will be the largest economic and physical change that this community has experienced since settlement.
Construction of high voltage transmission lines will make large-scale wind and solar possible, with community support and conditions.
We are going to welcome this transition, but you are going to consider us at every point.
While projects still need final approval, Hay Shire Council's negotiated agreements with developers that include long-term housing projects, subsidies for rooftop solar and cheaper electricity for the whole town. Residents could receive a $1,000 rebate on their energy bill every year for the next 30 years.
It will actually embed wealth into the whole community.
South of the Murray, Independent MP Helen Haynes is calling on the federal government to help other regions do the same.
We've got to move our mindset away from purchasing social licence from communities into long-term regional development.
No consultation, no consent.
In many parts of the country, there's been fierce opposition to renewables. But French multinational NG says that's not the case at Hay.
And we received 0 local objections, which is extremely rare for an energy project in the country.
The company wants to build almost 200 wind turbines and 900,000 solar panels plus battery storage. Some of the turbines would be on Richard Cannon's land, providing drought-proof farm income. But he wants the benefits to stretch further.
Landholders can see it to their business. The community can see it to, support for projects in Hay. And it's an industry not reliant on agriculture.
On the floodplains at Guyini west of Hay, pelicans are feasting. These environmentally significant wetlands are being restored by the Ngari Ngari Tribal Council. It's looking to renewable energy to help fund conservation and social programs for Indigenous youth.
Turn country back to its near natural state, and having the financial base to do that, to have that impact on people and country, that's the biggest outcome you can get.
The wind farm footprint for us is just in here on our boundary.
Partnering with Kalara Energy and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, they plan to build more than 70 turbines, 30 kilometres away from the wetlands on grazing land. Less than 1% of renewable energy developments in Australia have Indigenous ownership, compared with 20% in Canada. This project is showing that traditional owners can not only claim income from hosting turbines, but share in the equity and the decision-making.
It makes us independent, and that's what we've strived to do for many moons, and we're not far off doing it.
Putting the power in the hands of the people. Emily Doak, ABC News, Hay.
Time for sport with Tom Wildie. And Tom, the AFL Grand Final hype is building.
Yeah, the minor premier Sydney will face Brisbane Bree after the Lions' epic come-from-behind win against Geelong yesterday. It will be the first time the clubs have met in a grand final in 125 years and the first non-Victorian decider since 2006.
No longer just Lion Kings, but comeback kings.
Brisbane just had unfinished business to attend to.
Fans watched on in Brisbane's pubs. From lounge rooms around the country.
Oh my
And in the packed MCG stands, the siren triggered scenes of ecstasy. From 2-5 to start the season to still standing on the last Saturday in September.
If you had have said to me at the halfway mark of the season we're going to be playing in the grand final at the end of the year, I probably would have said you're crazy.
44 points down last week. It was 25 points the Lions had to claw back against the Cats.
To Logan Morris, out by 2 goals, the Brisbane Lions.
As Brisbane ensured a non-Victorian decider for the first time since 2006.
That's great for footy in those states, sort of old Fitzroy versus South Melbourne.
The Swans held an open fan session today at the SCG.
Definitely spurs us on that little bit more at the end of quarters, and we're very grateful to have such a great supporter base.
Parochial supporter Kenny Williams died just after the club's last grand final in 2022, but his daughter says his spirit will be with the players on Saturday.
I have been to all of them except for the 96. It's amazing being in the dressing room with my dad. He's so tiny, and like people like Adam Goods picking him up and kissing him.
Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
West Coast has been given a harsh reality check with its 2-game winning streak ended by a ruthless Brisbane Lions at Lathlane Park. The Western Bulldogs ended its winless start to the season with a big victory over Collingwood, while Sydney held off a fast-finishing GWS. The Lions kept the Eagles goalless until the fourth quarter on the way to a 45-point win, and the Crows proved too good for the Bombers in Adelaide. The undefeated Adelaide hosted the struggling Bombers, looking to return to the top of the AFLW ladder.
She has popped it through from the angle.
Essendon dominated territory in the opening term and managed to convert to stay with the Crows. But a late Neve Kelly goal gave the Crows the advantage at the first break.
And Kelly goes right on the quarter-time siren.
A 4-2 second term from Adelaide gave them a healthy buffer, which they didn't give up as they recorded a 4th win of the season. At Victoria Park, Collingwood and the Western Bulldogs battled to record their first wins of the season, and it was the Pies who led at the first break. But the Dogs took control in the second, kicking 3 unanswered goals to open a 9-point lead.
Lurking at the back, Woodley.
From there, the Western Bulldogs were in complete control as they cruised home and off the bottom of the ladder. Both Sydney and GWS were looking to get back on the winners list, a 3-goal opening term from Sydney giving them a 12-point lead.
It's soccer through. It's soccer through from Ham.
Michaela Poga could be in strife for a dangerous tackle which left Montana Ham needing a head injury assessment. The Swans looked on track for a comfortable win before the Giants made a late run, but it was too little, too late, as Sydney held on for victory to keep in touch with the top 8. West Coast has been a revelation under Daisy Pearce, but Brisbane is a premiership contender. And the Lions quickly showed why as they kicked 3 goals before the Eagles even went inside 50.
Brisbane are going to kick their third.
West Coast had no answers as Brisbane ran rampant on the way to a big win. Peel Thunder has won the WAFL Premiership, beating East Perth 92-59 in front of 25,000 fans at Perth Stadium. The sides exchanged goals in a tight opening quarter before the Thunder's AFL-listed players got on top. Midfielder Neil Erasmus kicked 2 second-quarter goals for Peel as they built a lead at the main break. The Royals couldn't match Peel's ball movement as the Thunder won their first premiership since 2017. The Sydney Roosters have crushed the NRL finals hopes of the Manly Sea Eagles. It was a runaway win for the Tricolours after a furious start in last night's semi-final.
A sudden death battle of the beaches at the Sydney Football Stadium. Jake Trebojevic came back on, but
some ways, losing Tolu and Jake, the first 2 tackles of the game, they're a good group of men, and they've worked hard for a common cause and ultimately weren't quite good enough.
Before he leaves at the end of the season. Bindi Bryce, ABC News.
Australia has claimed its 14th straight one-day international win after comfortably defeating England by 68 runs at Headingley overnight. Australia were sent into bat and fell to 9 for 221, but wicketkeeper Alex Carey bolstered their innings, making 74 from 67 deliveries, including a 49-run partnership with number 11, Josh Hazlewood. Carey's solo effort helped Australia to a defendable 270-run total. Aussie quicks Mitchell Starc and Josh Hazlewood made light work of England's top order as the hosts lost 5 for 65 in the first 10 overs. England were bowled out for 202, making it Australia's 7th straight one-day victory over their English opponents.
They bowled really well up front and got us in a bit of trouble. And, Hazelwood at the end there just to hang around did a fantastic job. And, the two big quicks come in today and add that experience to the group, and we're able to take early wickets, which we're after. And
Western Australia has made a shaky start to its one-day title defence, losing to New South Wales in Sydney by 8 runs. Former WA batter Josh Philippe made 139 for the Blues as they made 287, while Jai Richardson took 5 wickets. Half-centuries from Cameron Bancroft and Ashton Agar weren't enough to get WA home. They'll face South Australia in Sydney on Tuesday. And Bree, that's the latest in sport.
Thank you, Tom. And it was a beautiful sunny one for the city, with more of the same ahead and a little rain as well. The temperature in Perth dropped down to 6 degrees at 6:15 this morning, rising to a top of 25 degrees around 1:20 this afternoon. Right now in town it's 18 degrees and humidity is 67%. The state's coolest spot was Wandering, which recorded a minimum of 0. While in the north, the state's highest maximum of 37 degrees was reached at Curtin RAAF. To the satellite briefly, cloud over the north and interior with a trough and moist, unstable air mass is bringing patchy rain, showers and some thunderstorms. Low cloud skimming into the south in moist onshore winds is only bringing the odd light shower, clearer elsewhere with a high pressure ridge. On the synoptic, a broad trough of low pressure will remain over the southern Kimberley, northern interior and Pilbara for the next few days. That trough then set to move northwards midweek as a ridge strengthens to the southeast and brings fresh east to southeasterly winds to the area. For southern and central parts, a weak cold front will brush the southwest corner of the state tomorrow before a new ridge moves in from the west. Taking a quick look at the country's capitals tomorrow, partly cloudy in Adelaide and Melbourne. Windy for Hobart, mostly sunny days set for Canberra and Darwin with sunshine for Brisbane and Sydney. Back to WA, and in the north, showers and thunderstorms over the Kimberley, Pilbara and interior. Isolated heavy falls possible over the southeast Kimberley and eastern north interior. Showers and thunderstorms also over the north and east Gascoyne and northern Goldfields, with light showers possible over the southwest corner of the state. Chance of morning fog over southern parts of the southwest land division, with some smoke haze possible in the morning for parts of the southwest, lower west and western Great Southern districts. In Perth tomorrow, it'll be a sunny top of 23 degrees after an overnight low of 11. Sunrise will be at 5 minutes past 6, setting at 14 minutes past 6 in the evening. And looking ahead, partly cloudy and 22 for Tuesday, a sunny 25 on Wednesday, heating up to 27 degrees for Thursday with a possible shower developing. Showers and 21 on Friday before it's set to clear up for next weekend. And that's ABC News. You can stay up to date with ABC News Online, or you can catch the news anytime on ABC iView. It's been a pleasure having you join us this evening. Take care and good night.